Spider-Man is renowned for 3 of his best qualities: web-slinging, quick wits, and his big heart. There have been times, however, when his wits have been put to the test, when the web-slinger's enemies have proven that they're not just able to outpunch him, but that they're able to outthink him too. So with that in mind, I'm Adam, this is What Culture Comics, and here are 10 times Spider-Man has been outwitted. Number 10. Tombstone fights in a van, The Amazing Spider-Man number 2. Lonnie Lincoln, aka Tombstone, is better known for brute force and intimidation tactics than his quick wits. However, this comic sees Tombstone playing to his strengths with a calculated choice of terrain. Though Tombstone is no sloth in a fist fight, with superhuman strength and durability, Spider-Man's massive speed advantage meant he spent most of their fights hitting air. Recently, however, he pulled a surprisingly cunning strategy. By luring Spider-Man into a cramped space between hydraulic walls, taking some of Spidey's best punches like a champ while he got into position, he robbed Spider-Man of any room to maneuver. Catching the wall crawler with a vicious body blow, he proceeded to crush his ribs in a bear hug, ending the fight. In just a few panels, Tombstone proved that as well as being strong, he's also more cunning than we realized. Number 9. Hobgoblin commits the perfect crime, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 245. While a lot of later entries on this list involve villains defeating Spider-Man in a fight, there's more than one way to outwit your opponent. It could even be as simple as making sure you have an escape plan. In Amazing Spider-Man number 245, we see Roderick Kingsley, also known as the original Hobgoblin, put his criminal cunning on display to give Spider-Man the slip. After an exhaustive search for the Hobgoblin's identity as both Spider-Man and Peter Parker, it seems as if our hero has finally unearthed a lead: a small-time criminal named Lefty Donovan. However, Spider-Man's instincts tell him that there's more to this case. When Spider-Man unmasks the Hobgoblin, he discovers it is in fact Lefty Donovan, but Donovan lets slip that he wasn't acting alone. Just as he's about to name the mastermind behind the Hobgoblin, Kingsley remote controls Donovan's glider into a building, killing him and tying up any loose ends. Number 8. Kingpin hits Spider-Man where it hurts, Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1, number 89. Unlike many of the other villains on this list, Kingpin doesn't often involve himself with superheroes, preferring instead to own crime at a street level. When he does, however, he uses the same tactics that served him well in organized crime: cunning, manipulation, and a willingness to play the long game. Spectacular Spider-Man number 89 sees Kingpin use Spider-Man's own allies to lay a trap for him. In this comic, Black Cat, former cat burglar and Spider-Man's new partner, is searching for superpowers that will allow her to protect him. In desperation, she goes to the Kingpin, who, in exchange for a few robberies, hires New York's top scientists to make her superhuman. Her powers are fitting for a black cat. She can bring her enemies bad luck. However, Kingpin hid some secret fine print in her abilities. Everyone close to her, including Spider-Man, suffers from the same terrible luck, to the point that their lives are at risk. Number 7. Dr. Octopus proposes an alliance, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 55. Dr. Octopus is one of Spider-Man's oldest and most persistent enemies, and describing his many attempts to beat Spider-Man over the years would require a whole separate article. This one, however, really showcases Doc Ock's ability to think on his feet. Amazing Spider-Man number 55 sees Spider-Man tricked into teaming up with Otto Octavius. After stealing a tech-nullifying device from a military convoy, Octavius plans to use the device to hold Stark Industries hostage. Spider-Man, however, has predicted Doc Ock's plan and appears soon after to fight him. In desperation, Octavius uses the nullifier on Spider-Man, hoping to disable his web shooters. However, the nullifier's electromagnetic frequency plays haywire with the young hero's spider sense. When Spider-Man recovers, Otto is amazed to discover that Spider-Man is suffering from temporary amnesia, and, in a flash of genius, quickly convinces him that they're partners in crime. Not only does this finish the fight, but Spidey also helps his new partner escape. Otto definitely had the upper hand in this exchange. Number 6. Craven beats Spider-Man at his own game, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 294. Many consider this comic to be Craven the Hunter's finest hour. Craven, born Sergei Kravenov, is a Russian supervillain with superhuman powers who hunts his victims for sport, and sees Spider-Man as the ultimate big game. After years of trying and failing to catch his elusive prey, Craven retreats into the shadows, until finally, near the end of his life, he decides to dedicate himself to one last hunt to prove himself stronger than Spider-Man. While fighting Spider-Man head-on never went well for Craven, this plan was very different. After stunning Spider-Man with a poisoned dart, instead of going in for the kill, he dressed in a spider suit of his own and took to the streets. By the time Spider-Man awoke and found Craven, the hunter had already caught a terrifying Ratman named Vermin, a beast Spider-Man had never managed to capture without help in the past. By defeating Vermin when Spider-Man never could, he had finally proven himself as the superior hunter, and ends his own life soon after, satisfied that he fulfilled his ultimate goal. A hollow victory? Maybe, but a victory nonetheless. And while I have you there, please do make sure to let us know down in the comments of your favorite Spider-Man arc. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a like and come and subscribe. Alright, now back to the list. Number 5. Green Goblin Hacks Spider-Man City, Superior Spider-Man Volume 1, number 27. This story only sort of counts as Spider-Man getting outwitted because while Superior Spider-Man is indeed a Spider-Man story, Superior Spider-Man is not Peter Parker. During Otto's body swap with Peter Parker, a story that nearly made it onto this list, Otto took up the mantle of Spider-Man, determined to prove he was the superior vigilante. Looking to streamline the whole swing around the city looking for crime process, Otto invented hundreds of spider-bots to troll the city scanning for criminal activity, which he could act on only if he was needed. But Otto's celebration was short-lived, for soon after, the Green Goblin made his move. In his arrogance, Otto had never installed a failsafe for if his Spider-Man bots were hacked, and that's exactly what happened. Overnight, the Green Goblin rendered Otto's early warning system useless, and when he and his Goblin army stormed New York, the superior Spider-Man was completely caught off guard. Otto Octavius has always prided himself on his intelligence, but against the Green Goblin, that very pride was his undoing. Number 4. Spider-Man Breaks Bad? Amazing Spider-Man number 1. Spider-Man's secret identity and how his villains have tried to deduce that identity have been key aspects of several Spider-Man storylines over the years. But in Spider-Man's debut, a villain outwitted Spider-Man in a truly unique way, by using his anonymity against him. Amazing Spider-Man number 1 marked the appearance of his first villain, the Chameleon. Dmitry Smerdyakov, half-brother of Sergei Kravenov, aka Craven the Hunter, emigrated to the US from Russia around the time Spider-Man was first starting out. By this point, Dmitry had already invented his chameleon persona, and uses it for the first time to steal missile defense plans from the Lark building. Seizing his chance to incriminate the young hero, Chameleon returns to the Lark building disguised as Spider-Man, then lures the web-slinger into the same spot with the promise of a job offer. Then, when Spider-Man arrives, Chameleon takes off, leaving Spider-Man the only culprit. While Spider-Man does defeat Chameleon, the police then mistake Spider-Man for the imposter, firing on him and forcing him to flee. Number 3. Mysterio makes his entrance, Amazing Spider-Man number 13. A list of the times Spider-Man has been outwitted wouldn't be complete without the master of illusion himself, Mysterio. Making his debut in Amazing Spider-Man number 13, Mysterio's first heist in the Midtown Museum set the tone for all of his appearances to come. At this point in Spider-Man's story, he was nothing more than a masked vigilante making a name for himself, inspiring Mysterio, like Chameleon before him, to try and frame the young wall crawler for his robberies. When Spider-Man tried to put a stop to this, he was amazed to discover that his spider sense wasn't working, and more amazingly, Mysterio could make his webbing disappear with a wave of his hand. Later, of course, he discovered that this wasn't the work of magic, but incredibly sophisticated equipment. Mysterio had nearly fooled Spider-Man completely, until he began to gloat about his victory, not realizing Spider-Man was recording their conversation. While Mysterio's arrogance proved his undoing, he certainly gave the young hero a run for his money. Number 2. Mysterio comes back from the grave, Amazing Spider-Man number 141. Ever the persistent nemesis, the Master of Illusion makes this list one more time for his triumphant return to villainy. In a 2-issue arc beginning in 1975, Mysterio is up to his old tricks, taunting Spider-Man with holograms of his old villains, and even tricking the hero into punching brick walls until he injures his hands. But as Spider-Man was about to find out, the real illusion was only just beginning. When Peter Parker went to the Bugle to tell everyone Mysterio was back in town, his friend Ned Leeds gave him a nasty shock. Apparently Mysterio had died in prison a year ago. Now haunted by what he believed to be a vengeful ghost, Spider-Man's fear of these illusions was dialed up to 11. It was only when he discovered one of the image projectors did he realize the other possibility. Just because the original Mysterio was dead didn't mean someone else hadn't taken up the mantle. After a final showdown with the new Mysterio, it's revealed he was Quentin Beck's old cellmate out to avenge his buddy, but he really had Spider-Man fooled for a minute there. Number 1. Spider-Man fights himself, Amazing Spider-Man number 149. Top of the list for outwitting Spider-Man has to go to one of his most devious villains, Professor Miles Warren, aka the Jackal. A former mentor of Peter Parker, the Jackal's revenge hit Peter mentally and physically. In the finale of the Delusion Conspiracy arc, Jackal uses Spider-Man's abilities against him, before ending their cat-and-mouse game with a lethal coup de grace. Once the Jackal has succeeded in his plan to clone Gwen Stacy, his plan to get back at her murderer, who he thought was Spider-Man, started in a truly genius way, by earning Peter's trust. Since his spider sense doesn't activate for trusted friends, Professor Warren was free to drug him into unconsciousness before growing a clone of him, forcing the two into a battle to the death, where both were perfectly evenly matched. While one Spider-Man did manage to best the Jackal and free his hostages, the other was unfortunately killed, making the Jackal one of the only villains to murder Spider-Man. Between that and circumventing Peter's spider sense without a single gadget, the Jackal definitely outwitted Spider-Man in this story.